Welcome back to Incorporate, the podcast for business owners presented by the UB School of Management Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, where we explore the strategies and decisions behind building stronger and more sustainable businesses. I'm your host, Susan Steffen, Executive Director of the UB Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership, and I'm joined, as always, by our producer, Jordan Lima of Lemur Studios. Today, we're talking about one of the most important drivers of business success, leadership. Many entrepreneurs start businesses because they're experts in their craft or they're passionate about a certain product or service. But as their companies grow, they quickly realize that success depends just as much on how they lead people as on what they sell. Joining me today are two guests who bring research and real-world experience to this topic. Dr. Jim Lemoine is an associate professor of organization and human resources at the UB School of Management. His research focuses on leadership, ethics, and motivation. Before entering academia, Jim also spent a decade working in business, consulting, and entrepreneurship. Also joining us is Althea Luehrsen, a leadership development consultant, executive coach, and the founder of August Moon Consulting. So Althea and Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
All right, we want to start with just getting back to the basics. So our entrepreneurs, they start a business. They're really good at whatever it is they do. But as the company grows, they find out that leadership kind of becomes the critical success factor. So when does that happen? Like, when does it switch over to where what you know isn't as important as how you lead? Althea, we'll start with you. You look like you got a lot to say.
Usually when they get in trouble. No, I think most entrepreneurs, as you said, start a business because they're very good at something or they're very passionate about it. But as the company grows, leadership becomes important because just knowing and being good at your craft doesn't necessarily equate to a successful business. An example I may use is a dentist. Goes to school, dentistry, knows dentistry inside and out, outstanding dentist, people have healthy teeth, great gums, et cetera, but he does not know how to run a business. Dentistry school does not teach business. And so they go along and there could be problems with accounting, financial, embezzlement, culture, people leaving, turnover, unhappy patients. So that's when it's important to bring in the leadership so that he or she can actually be able to run a practice that is a business, not just being a dentist. That would be an example I would use.
So, Jim, the research you do looks at different leadership styles, right? So let's start with definitional. What are the common leadership approaches in organizations and what's working and what isn't?
Oh, dear heaven.
There's so many.
Could I go back to the first question?
Sure, absolutely.
I got a great story
Absolutely.
on that.
We love good stories.
If you don't mind, and that'll give me a chance to figure out the answer to your second question. There was a time when after I started my own business, before I was in academia, where I was running this business, and I was, very small business, about 15 employees, and I inherited some employees because I bought some aspects of the business from someone else. When they first came in, I paid them a nice big raise to try to guarantee their loyalty so I wouldn't have to focus on them as much, so I could focus on what I was good at, so I could focus on the business plan, so I could focus on the strategy, so I could focus on the finances. It was a dry cleaner. A few months later, it's Christmas time. It's getting cold. People are bringing in their quilts, their heavy coats. So, business is going to pick up. And I'm in a staff meeting, and I say, all right, I'm going to need everyone to chip in. We're going to have some overtime coming in. I'm going to need everyone to do a little bit. And one woman, I'll never forget this, foundational entrepreneurial experience. One woman raised her hand, and she said, well, why should we do that for you? Why should we come in in the middle of the staff meeting? And the first thing I said, well, I just gave you a big raise about 6 months ago. And she said, yeah, but what have you done for me lately? And I will never forget that because I didn't really have a response. It occurred to me that I'd spent so much time thinking about being a dentist, to use your analogy, the business plan, the accounting, that I hadn't spent time being a leader to my employees, and then I was seeing the cost of that come across. So I think there is a moment for every entrepreneur where it really hits you, and you're like, wow, this wasn't what I was thinking about when I thought about starting my own business.
And how do you define that? Like, what is leadership?
That's my hobby. So, one thing I like to say in a lot of my presentations is that I'm an old school guy, and I have this old book called The Dictionary. So I looked up leadership. Definition 1 is the act of leading.
Okay.
And if you look up leading, or the root lead, definition 1 is what a leader does. And then if you look up leader, definition 1 is someone who practices leadership. So even the dictionary doesn't know what leadership is. And I like to open, as you both know, I love to open my presentations with that question, what is leadership? And I've noticed, even with C-suite audiences, like I'm presenting to the upper management of a big company. I can think of a lot of big companies here in West New York who I shall not name. As soon as I ask that question, everybody in the room has got a really important text.
They'll look it down.
And they won't make eye contact with me. But I think that's important because how can we be good leaders if we don't agree on what it is to be a good leader? And that's kind of one of the emphases of my research. Personally, I think it's all about motivating and inspiring and developing and making good decisions. And I can go deeper on that, but I've talked for too long.
Well, I also think, too, leaders need to know how to listen. I think you, as a good leader, you don't know everything yourself. So as you like to say, we also always talk about this, that if no one's following you, who are you leading? So you do have to create an environment where people want to follow you, that you're modeling those behaviors, that they want to do something for you just because they want to, not because they have to, not because they're being paid to. I think it's important for leaders to understand that.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned earlier, Althea, that sometimes it's when things go wrong, right? That they start thinking about how am I leading or what am I doing? If it's all going well, I must be doing a good job. So what are the things that you see, like if somebody says, oh, you ought to go talk to Althea because you've got some leadership issues, like what are the problems and what are people getting wrong?
I think one of the biggest things is delegating and learning to let go, especially with business owners. Typically they start a business because they're passionate about it, because it's theirs. They grew that and they have great ownership with that. And I think it's difficult for them to trust anyone else to do it as good as they would and as quality as they would. And I think they also have an expectation that people are going to be doing the job like they own it, and they don't. And so nobody's going to have as much passion for their company or for the task as the owner does. So I think learning how to delegate and learning how to be able to accept that people aren't going to be doing things the same way as you, and really getting comfortable with that, learning how you're showing up to others, understanding how you're coming across to people. I just think there's so many different things that they need to do, and to be able to just, like I said, walk away, be able to delegate, give some of that to other people, and trust them to be able to, maybe they're not going to do it the same way, but they will actually be able to get the work done and get the job done. And that's a difficult task, I think, for business owners.
There's a difference between leading an organization and running an organization, right?
Difference between leading and managing, for sure, yeah.
Do you do any of that research, Jim, when it comes to the difference between leading and managing? And do most people who are heading a company, I won't say if they're leading it or managing, do they get that?
Sometimes. I don't know about most. I'll say in the entrepreneurial world, often there's a firmer disconnect there, just for the reasons that we've all been talking about so far. I find actually one of the most common management leadership styles in small businesses is actually a very democratic style, that sounds good. Why don't we all do what the group thinks together? It's almost a fearful style. This gets back to actually some of the first research I did with CEL, where I was really surprised when I found I did a study on just, if you control for things like your industry, if you're in a family business, your amount of starting capital, angel investors, if you control for all of that, is there anything about the entrepreneur themselves that actually predicted success in West New York? Your business is growing, it's profitable. And one of the big things that popped out, some things that popped out made a lot of sense. You got to be self-confident. You got to have a plan. All good. One of them was you've got to be willing to be a little bit rude. You can't just be a yes man to your people. You have to be willing to say, no, that's not good enough. No, I don't think that's the right way to go. But a lot of times what we find, especially in small businesses, is that people are leaders, business owners, they're so afraid of losing their best people, of angering their best people, of getting them down. Like, how would I replace this person, that they let them get away with little things and then a little bigger things, and it becomes habit forming.
And I actually sometimes see the opposite of that. I agree with you, but I see the opposite of that, where they're so focused on their business. They're so in charge. They're so depersonality on the disc wheel, if you will, that nobody is ever going to do it as well as they will. And they want to just tell everybody what to do, and they don't want to listen to other people's ideas and ways of doing things, especially when it's family businesses and generational.
Oh, absolutely. From interviews I did, those can coexist.
Yeah.
I know I can do it better than these people, but I'm terrified of them. So I'm just going to go along with it. And I'm caricaturing it, but that's I'm sure anybody who's ever run their own organization who listens to that is kind of nodding their head going, yeah, I could see how you could feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. We facilitate a lot of accountability groups at CEL where business owners get together. And I'm always amazed when somebody was sharing something they'll struggle with, and the whole room will go, well, it's pretty clear to us you need to fire, XYZ. And the next, week or month they'll come in, did you fire? So, because there's such angst around some of those really difficult conversations and the difficult tasks that, are part of the leadership job description, but they're not the fun parts,
Yeah. I have a business owner that I won't name names. It's not even in Western New York that has had quite a bit of turnover for various different reasons. And there is an employee they have right now that is not working out and is being cancer-like within the organization, and she won't let her go. They won't let them go because they're afraid of the reputation in the community that they have such turnover. So that's where I think the fear comes in.
Right. Well, and I think sometimes you want to be liked, and you want to feel like your employees are part of the family or part of the bigger mission or culture of whatever it is you're trying to do. And so performance reviews and firings and difficult conversations don't always go along with that.
Nobody likes to have difficult conversations.
If you really dive deep down into most leaders, we all want to have that world's best boss mug that Michael Scott had on his desk. There's a little bit of Michael Scott in all of us.
The Office is actually a really good leadership program to what not to do. Is it?
Yeah, right.
Jordan, you've been quiet today. What's going on over there?
I was thinking, though, your client there needs something like class connections and an accountability group, because there's nothing like having 6 other business owners say, fire them, fire them. It's going to help you.
Absolutely.
And drill it into your brain.
Yeah.
So if that person's listening, fire them. Fire them.
Yeah. Well, sometimes because it's so much angst and drama and your own energy that's going into something that might just be a bad fit, on both sides.
I was thinking this whole time. I wasn't just being quiet in the stars. And I was thinking with leadership, it's very interesting letting go of things and thinking, oh, I can do it better. And because I know, and Tyler in the booth back there were times when, he took control of things and I did know I can do it better. And no, I don't think so. You let someone take it and run with it and learn their process, and it becomes their own, and it becomes their process, not yours anymore. So you can let go.
You'll be surprised how much you can learn by listening. Yeah, just listening to your people, listening to what they have to say, and see what you can learn, because we don't know everything.
So that's leading me into our next kind of topic of conversation, which is culture. And we're talking about leadership, and we're talking about culture, and we tend to kind of put them together, but I'm not sure that we really understand what culture is and what does it look like and how can the leader of the organization influence it. Jim, I'm going to start with you. I throw you the hard questions.
Well, that's another one that we struggle to define, right?
Yeah.
And my favorite definition that I've heard, culture is kind of a shared set of understandings within a team, within an organization. This is who we are. This is how we do things. This is the way we approach our stakeholders. And that does start with the leader, especially if it's a small business or a family business. Of course, it starts with the founder. There's so much research that says that whether they know it or not, whether they like it or not, leaders are emulated by their teams, even their team members who don't particularly like them. Even their team members who are brand new or have been around a long time or have been doing this as long as they have. Just the fact that you have that leadership role, that you run this business, that you started this business, makes people even subconsciously start to emulate, follow what you do. So culture can come from a lot of different places. It can come from the team members themselves. It can come from the industry they're in. It can come from the vendors they work with. It can come from the customers they associate with. But there's so much research says the number one source of culture is just how does the leader act?
So that's also why you can't say do what I say and not what I do, right? Because they're watching what you do.
Well, it works so well when we say that to our kids, doesn't it?
I know, right?
I mean, it's the same principle.
No, I agree with that. I think modeling behaviors is the most important thing that can create that culture, as long as you're modeling good behaviors.
Right.
But I think that, for example, I used to work in the hotel industry. I spent many years at Marriott, and being one of the top chains in the world, there was when I first started there, every manager had to shadow each department. So I spent a whole day in the housekeeping department making beds, doing laundry. I spent a day behind the front desk. I was bussing tables, whatever had to be done. But we also learned that take care of the customer first. So whenever I was in the hotel, and I was a sales manager, when I was in the hotel, I would see a room service tray in the hall. I would pick it up and take it back to the kitchen. Yeah. the front desk was busy, I'd hop behind the front desk and I start checking people in. The employees saw that I was willing to do so much to help the hotel and to help their departments that whenever I needed something over and above for one of my big groups coming in, they would bend over backwards to make that happen. So I think it's important. But, modeling behaviors can also backfire. So an example, I'm familiar with a company where there's not a work at home policy. There's no remote work policy, which is kind of strange in this day and age. And the owner lives in Florida in the winter and runs the company from home. So I don't work with them. This is not a client, but I think that is not modeling behaviors very well. Right. And consequently, there's heavy turnover in that company because why do you get to do it and we don't get to do it? So I think it's important for people to understand that when, as the leader, as the owner of the company, that you'd really have to pay attention to what you're doing and what message you're sending.
And you can be really explicit about that. That's not something, we set time aside for meetings. We set time aside for customer engagements. We set time aside for projects. We don't usually set time aside for leadership. We don't usually set time aside for building a culture. When I was at the Schwann's Food Company, remember them?
Yeah,
ice cream, frozen
love their
foods.
Stuff, yeah.
I started as a district manager down in Louisiana, and we had this in the morning, everybody's got to load all the food onto the trucks. And every salesperson was loading their own food onto their own trucks for their route that they were going. But what happened is if you've got a whole lot of orders, then you need to load extra food. So you spent a whole lot of extra time loading the truck. So you got a late start. So you didn't make it like you see, it just didn't logically work out. So when I became the manager, I was like, okay, I'm going to help you load the truck. And everybody's like, well, managers don't do that. You've got paperwork to do. And I was like, yeah, I've got paperwork to do, but we need to get this truck out. And then the assistant manager saw I was doing that. So he started helping loading the trucks in the morning. And then everybody started helping loading and within a month, we had a culture where every morning, everybody loaded everybody's trucks. The heaviest ones went out. And we saw our sales skyrocket.
Wow.
It's just a little thing. It's a little thing. You don't always know you're doing it, but you've got to be consciously thinking, what's the culture I want to set here? And am what I'm doing is what I'm doing leading up to that culture.
It's something else. I've worked for a long time, so there's a lot of stories. I worked for Abbott Labs a long time ago, and I was their office manager. I started my career very differently. And the district manager included me in everything. So I was part of the team. So he really helped me understand what good culture looks like, what good leadership looks like, because just because I was the assistant and the office manager, the secretary, whatever you want to call it, I was still part of the entire team. Whatever happened, wherever we went, dinners, group outings and everything, I was always included. And I use that leadership style because I think that's important too, that every member of the team is bringing something to the table, is bringing something to the success. And I think it's important to treat everyone and include them.
There's a lot of research that says one of the most effective aspects of an organizational or team culture is low power distance. Exactly that. Everybody's got a seat at the table. We don't refer to each other by our titles or anything like that. One of my favorite things, I visited Chick-fil-A's campus once, and nobody's got titles on their name tags. Nobody's even got last names. It's just first names, and usually just something fun about them. I once found myself trash talking the Atlanta Falcons on the Chick-fil-A campus with some guy, and it turned out it was the COO. I didn't even know. But it was a great example of a low power distance culture.
Yeah. So Jim, I want to get into a topic I know I've heard you discuss, and I love the way you discuss it, servant leadership. So that can be a buzzword, but it can also be a really powerful leadership style. So can you help us understand what is servant leadership and how can maybe focusing on that help an organization succeed?
You just keep asking me these what is questions. This is why you have the professor
how much
here just
time
to be
do we have?
the definitional pedanticist here.
Can I take a stab at it and have you critique it? Because I saw you do this before.
Well, how good's your memory? Let's
I've
find
seen
out.
it many times, and I can
based on what we've been talking about, I jotted something down. Providing the structure and opportunities for people to excel at doing what you need them to do. So you're providing them with the structure, but also the opportunities that they want so they can advance and they can get better in what they're going to do with their lives, but to do what you need them to do.
I like it.
Wow.
I
Is
take
he
it
deep or what?
I take it 2 steps further, though.
Okay,
I
please.
take it 2 steps further, though. The servant leader, I think, would say, yes, I want to give them the structure and opportunities, develop them to do what I need them to do, but also to do what they need to do.
Okay.
To help them reach their potential. One of my favorite things from Robert Greenleaf's original book on servant leadership was the idea that lots of managers ask, what are you doing today to help the company accomplish its goals? The servant leader will ask, well, what can I do to help you accomplish your goals? And those could be a little bit different from what the company really wants. So I'll just take what you had and just push it, just expand it just a little bit.
Wonderful.
And I'd also say the other thing that makes servant leadership different, and this is unique. I think I said before, we study over 70 different approaches to leadership. And the one thing, I've actually written this, the one thing that makes servant leadership unique is it's very much about my people, but it's not just about my people. It's also about, I want the organization to strive. I want my people to thrive. I want my employees to thrive. I want my community to thrive. I want the world to become a better place based on what we do. So the definition I use for servant leadership is humble. So we're getting back to that power distance thing. Humbly influencing and developing other people to maximize benefits for stakeholders. And stakeholders, first and foremost, exactly what Jordan said, are your people, but they're not the only ones. There's also your customers, there's your communities, there's your vendors. Where are you going to be tomorrow if you don't have anywhere to get your supplies from? And then, of course, the bottom line. And that's where some people think, I've heard people say, wow, servant leadership's just being nice. It's just, always doing CSR. No, it's not always doing CSR. If you're not making money today, you won't be around to serve anybody tomorrow. But you've heard a lot about and read a lot. You talk a lot about servant leadership, even if you don't use that exact word. What do you think about that?
What you said. No, I've been through many workshops with Jim, leading them on servant leadership, and really, not just being able to understand that it's not all about you. Basically, in a nutshell, it's not all about you. It's not all about the bottom line. There's just encompassing, like you just said, the community, the customers, the people, the staff. The financials, everything has to be thought about when you're thinking about servant leadership. So you're serving people. You're not doing this just for yourself, and you're taking that narcissism out of it. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the word.
Well, you're trying. You're on the right track. You're trying. That's very hard for all of us to do. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it's
not all about us.
The more impressive our titles get, the more successful we are, the more narcissistic we become. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's just so much research. We just become entitled bastard. Like, I'm surprised you're so nice, as accomplished as you are. Is what the research says. I'm sure that's the dark side you keep hidden from me.
No, I promise you.
and you've got to be very vigilant for that and humble. And I've completely lost track of where I was going.
You know what? That brings up a good point, though. I really believe that good leaders and people should just be themselves, not trying to be something you're not. And I think it's the more money you make and the more prestige you have, the more title you have, a lot of times people change. And I think if you just be yourself, I'm still a human being. And if somebody wants to talk with me who's trying to come up in their career and wants to have a cup of coffee or a Zoom call, I'm willing to do that, because a lot of people didn't help me along the way. I started working in the 70s, so not to date myself, but I think it's important to be able to be open and give yourself to others to be able to help them achieve what they are trying to achieve. But just be yourself. I'm the same person sitting here as I am at 8 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock at night or wherever I happen to be. I don't try to be something I'm not. I think it's a lot of work to try to be something different.
I'm much nicer now than I am at 8 a.m. I'm grumpy at 8 a.m.
I'm great at 8. I get up at 5:30. So
we are talking about extremes, though.
Yeah.
It's more insidious at the micro level, and probably at the level that a lot of entrepreneurs have. It's not that overnight you become a jerk. You become very narcissistic and entitled. It may just be that over the course of the first few months, you stop thinking through your problems all the way. Or an employee says, could we do this? And like, oh, no, I've seen this for the past few months. We can just do it this way. And you just become a little more closed-minded. You start to assume it's always worked this way. It's always going to work this way. And there's so many case studies of businesses that have failed because their executives were very accomplished, had lots of experience, but they just assumed that the solutions they've been using forever are going to keep working.
And that brings up a point, too, that it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So you can tell your people, no, that's not going to, we tried that before, it's not going to work. But you can also do it in a way that they feel that they've been heard. So I think that's important, too. That communication piece, I think, is huge in leadership.
Back to that, yeah. So what are, if I'm a business owner listening to this and I say, okay, this all sounds great, but I'm a great leader. What are some
You absolutely are.
What are some signs in their organization that they may be part of what's holding it back? Like, what are some warning signs that might cause a business leader to be a little more introspective and say, you know what, maybe I am part of the problem?
I would say turnover would be one of them. I would think stagnant growth would be another one. Reputation in the community, loss of customer base. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen. What's your thought on that?
I would say, all of those, absolutely. I'd say just if you look around and like, why is the culture of the company this way? Why are people, I hear this so much. I'm such a great leader, but my people, the culture's somehow been completely messed up. And
they don't like coming to work.
I wonder, why is that? And they're angry. Like, I'm in Florida, they're angry that they have to work from the office. I mean, it's so easy to accidentally become a hypocrite. It's so easy. So that's actually the one that I see most often is people are complaining, wow, the culture of my team is terrible. How does this happen? I must have hired the wrong people, right? And that could be a part of it, but the culture of a team is really reflective of the leader. So if you're just really surprised by things that are happening within your organization, I'd say that's when you got to kind of take a second look at
If you actually notice, that's the other thing too, right?
Yeah.
Can leaders turn it around once they see these signs? Can they take the reins and get it back under control?
I 100% think so. One of the things I like to do in executive coaching is assessments. I think assessments are extremely important. One of my favorite ones is the Hogan Personality Assessment, and it helps people understand how they're showing up to others. So it's not just, oh, you're this or you're that. This is how you show up to others. So this is what you think you're doing. This is how you think you're performing, you're behaving, and how you're being perceived. And it's a lot more than that. And it's 3 parts to it. There's a lot of weird questions, but it helps you understand. It's what we all have our scores, whether they're high or low. That doesn't mean good and bad, but we all overuse those. And when we overuse those, it's typically when we're stressed. And everybody gets stressed, whether you're tired, overworked, you're mad at your spouse, whatever. And you're looking at those things that what can derail you to understand yourself better and understand how you're showing up to others. Then you start to have that self-awareness created that you're able to be like, oh, wow, I didn't realize I was acting like that. I didn't realize I was coming across like that. And then you put the steps in place to be able to make those changes to improve. Everybody can be tweaked.
But it's a struggle for our egos to do that, right? Especially as a leader. I can't tell you how many times I've had managers tell me, like, I know I was wrong, but I'm not sure, like, how should I handle this? Like, if I apologize, if I just come clean, will that make me look weak?
Right.
Will that make me look like less of a leader? And frankly, I hear that more than anything from women and minorities, because they've often had to struggle a lot more to get to the place they're at. And, I finally got this power. Is it okay for me to kind of endanger it like that? But actually, there's a lot of research that says humility is a fantastic thing for leaders, saying, I'm not sure, I made a mistake. Like, what a great example to set for your team. I made a mistake, but I'm doing something about it. I'm going to fix that. 9 times out of 10, people tend to respect that rather than be put off by it. You were about to say.
Yeah, actually, to that point, I run a women's program, and one of the things that we work on is executive presence. And there is a Harvard case study paper, and I'm not going to get this exactly right, but in 2010, what were the top traits of executive presence, of strong leader? And now in 2020, what's the difference? And it's amazing, but humility is one of them now. And it was things like tallness, male, well-dressed. It was like fashion. But now it's more like humility. Authenticity is now important. Humility. So that's all coming. It's a lot of changes. So I don't have it in front of me. I can't remember all the traits, but it's changed.
The other thing leaders have to keep in mind about that is it's not a one-to-one relationship. Like, you can't do one thing that destroys the culture and just do one good thing and all of a sudden the culture is going to be better. Research says it's more like 1 to 5, 1 to 10, 1 to 15, 1 to 20. It takes a lot more work to do it, but your culture is worth it.
So if things have gotten out of control in a bad way, it's going to take some time. It's not an overnight fix.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like, people want it to be an overnight fix.
Yeah.
People are hoping it'll be an overnight fix. And most managers, when it's not an overnight fix, they throw their hands up and go, well, it's just the people. It's
if I just give them that raise, they should do it for me.
Thank you for rubbing that in, my own entrepreneurial mistakes.
Hey, we have to start somewhere, right?
That's how we learn.
I do think that communication is the solver of most every problem, good communication, and most people don't do that very well. So I don't know if you want to talk about that at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do think
Because
that
difficult conversations, by and large, all our business owners avoid them like the plague.
most people do.
Yeah.
Everybody does. No one wants to have those conversations, whether it's with your spouse or your kid or your next door neighbor who's, making a mess of their yard.
I love having them with my kid.
Oh, well, that's a different story.
just me.
Yeah. But I think they're difficult. People don't like to have those, regardless of what your personality type is. And so, there's 3 types of conversation. This is just my theory. I'm going to yell at you. I'm going to attack you. You're not hearing a word I'm saying because you're preparing your defense. Or I'm going to talk behind your back like, did you see what Susan did? Did you hear what But we don't talk to the person. And the tension, there's no words being spoken, but the tension is there. And it causes trouble. Or you can actually just have the conversation and keep it neutral, keep it professional, keep it kind, but actually say what you need to say. And so many people are afraid to do that. And I think if we could teach people...
Especially entrepreneurs, especially small business owners.
Yes, yeah.
Because
Are there any tips or techniques to break that ice if you're afraid to have a conversation? I mean, like entering it lightly, entering it in a very serious way. Like, what's the tone to make it easy for you?
Pretty matter of fact. Like,
Okay.
You know what? I have something I really want to talk to you about. Could we sit down and chat about this? And just keep it non-controversial. Keep it not, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to bother you. Or I'm so mad at you. Just keep it, you know what? I'm struggling with something. Could we talk about this? Can you help me understand? That's one of my favorite phrases. Can you help me understand? So I think if people can actually have those conversations to realize, why isn't this working? Why is this relationship not working? Whether you have to, exit somebody from the company, at least you have the conversation about it. You're not just firing them or just letting them quit. So I just think it's important if people can have those difficult conversations, but not doing it in the difficult way.
yeah, there's a good middle ground there. Have you ever heard of the feedback sandwich?
Oh, yeah.
I call it the compliment cookie. The compliment.
The compliment cookie.
The traditional advice for feedback giving, especially difficult, is you start out with something positive, then you have the negative thing you really want to talk about, and then you end with something positive.
And they don't hear the middle at all.
Yeah, does it get lost though? Does
Exactly.
It get
Well,
lost?
that's it's a myth.
Okay.
It's a very, very common myth. I can't tell you how many corporate trainings I went to that talked about the feedback sandwich, but actually, exactly what Althea just said. People, if you have a conversation with someone, the thing they remember most strongly is the last thing you say. The thing they remember second most strongly is the first thing you say. So that middle, that developmental middle, is just getting lost in the sandwich.
So what if it's just 2 points? You say, you were doing this really good, but we have to talk about
Actually,
this bad
that's
thing.
exactly what a lot of research has coalesced on. Positive, then negative. There you go. You get a PhD on something.
Perfect. I knew I'd get it someday.
But then even with the negative, I mean, to build on Althea's point, she's absolutely right. It's not just a you're doing this wrong. It could be I believe you could do this better. It could be, let's develop a plan to do this better. It could be, if you do this better, here's how it helps you get to your goals. It's not just you're doing this wrong.
And also, too, you can think about it, having that conversation. Help me understand why this isn't working. Help me understand why you keep not accomplishing what you're supposed to. Help me understand, because you could uncover that they, A, don't know what they're doing, B, they need more help, C, they're not qualified. You need to shift things around and put them in a different position. So I think that having the conversation to actually find out, they might be struggling with something personally that's really getting in the way of their work. So having the conversation to find out, why is this happening, and then take it from there. Don't assume. We have to ask more questions and we have to have more conversation.
Because people all have stuff.
Everybody's got something.
Everybody's got stuff. They've got baggage and things that they're carrying and stuff that's going on. But you have a business to run, right?
I hate to say that as the business owner, you may be having this thought in your mind of why they're underperforming, and have your own story, and then you ask them and you find out something totally different that's correctable or not even related to what's going on.
I'll give you a quick story. When I was running Leadership Upflow, we had a transportation day where we had everybody have to ride public transportation for the entire day. And it was very challenging, and they had some tasks they had to do when they were there. And afterwards, one of the people that was in the class, she actually was a branch manager at a bank. And she had a woman who worked for her that was late pretty much all the time, every day. She had quite a few children and didn't have any support, so she was the sole responsible for the children. And after she actually she rode that bus all day long, and this woman took public transportation to work. She rode the bus. She realized, let me talk to her. This woman was about this close from being fired. They found out that she had to, the bus isn't always on time, and she had to wait to get all these children to school, get them on the bus, and then she could get on her bus, and that was making her late. She was one of the best workers they had once she got there. They changed her hours. They went to HR and they changed her hours and saved a person's job because she talked to her, she heard what was going on, and she listened, and she saved a person's job.
Empathy.
It's incredibly powerful to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. One thing that I love to encourage managers, business owners to do, and it's not always possible, but if you could take a half day once a month and just pretend you're an intern to one of your employees, like train me how to do your job and watch what they do. Was some of the best leadership advice I got earlier in my career. I did that once a month, half a day. I just pretend I'm an idiot high school student, college student, doesn't know anything about it. Show me what you do all day. I learned so much about the problems they were having that I never would have realized otherwise. And they often assumed I knew about them, so they weren't bringing them up. It was a great way to identify the problems and resolve.
What's a TV show where they did that?
It's Undercover
Boss.
Undercover Boss, where they would go in and
Yeah.
they'd find out all these things going on in their company that they assumed they knew.
Like the story I said with Marriott. They had us all work in a department and do laundry and make beds and do all those things
that's
that
great.
you realize all the employees that you were telling them what to do to make sure that your groups could run.
So that's tied into another thing John Hogue mentioned in his optimization, being a part of what the workforce is doing and seeing what they're doing. So he had the exercise, something like stand in the circle and just look at everything for the day. And then we just did an episode on AI where they were saying, look at every problem you have and see how AI can solve it. So if we combine all three of these into one lesson, we can really get somewhere here. Yes.
So how can, if you're, again, listening to this and you think, yeah, maybe there's an issue here, but I need to find out more, how can a leader get feedback? What do you do? I mean, I know once in a while, jobs I've been on, they'll send a survey. I'm not filling it out with what I really think because I don't know if it's truly anonymous or if I'm going to say something. So how does a leader actually get good, actionable feedback? Do they ask, or does that not work?
You might not always get it directly yourself as the leader, but I do a lot of 360 assessments, and I'm certified to do them electronically, but I prefer to do them in conversation. I get much better feedback. People are more apt to tell me more about what they really want to say. It's anonymous. When the feedback gets sent back to the leader, it's all combined as one document. It's not you said this and you said that. But I get a lot of information that usually doesn't surprise the person, but when they're hearing it over and over again. So I think actually getting back to conversation, having that conversation, talking to your people, surveys can work as well, but I think sometimes people are reluctant to say too much in writing. So I think maybe bringing in somebody from the outside to conduct those one-on-one conversations, whether it's not even HR, because HR works for the company. So just bringing in an outside facilitator to help that. If they're really having a problem, I think that's something that could be done.
That's something that I've heard so much from managers. Like, I want to get feedback, but I don't think my people feel comfortable doing that. And I've made a lot of people uncomfortable with this question myself. I've been like, well, why would they be uncomfortable? In my mind, that points at a failure of the culture right there. If you've got a culture where an employee doesn't feel comfortable going to their boss, the leader, the company owner, and saying, hey, here's how I think we could be doing something better. If an employee doesn't feel comfortable doing that, you failed at building the right culture. That's not their fault. That's your fault.
You know what the worst thing is, too? When they ask for the feedback and they do a survey and then nothing is done.
And that happens a lot.
It's the worst part.
That happens a lot.
Yeah. So that's a mistake not to make.
Right. Don't ask if you're not going to do something
anything
with what you get as a result. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You ready to do a survey, Jordan? Is that
all right?
So going back to that authenticity and be yourself, right?
So you guys both deal with a lot of business owners, and they're in a lot of different situations. Maybe it's high growth, maybe it's a stressful time, maybe it's what's going on in the economy and the world. How do they make sure that their leadership is helping during those periods of time? Like whether their leadership is helping them to grow, to navigate uncertainty, to do that, or whether the leader has absorbed all that stress and is kind of now not showing up maybe in the way that they think. How do they navigate those difficult situations as a leader?
I heard a lot of questions there.
I know. There's a lot I'm trying to figure out. But what I always hear,
I appreciate that.
Let me give you some context. We hear all the time from our business owners, this is all great, but I'm so busy. We've got so much going on. I don't really have time to worry about the leadership stuff. I'm trying to run a company. I've got all this going on, blah, 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 blah.
You bet.
And, you don't understand tariffs and what's going on with inflation. And how can they still show up.
And what I've always said, and this goes back to something I've said earlier, we set time for our meetings. We set time for our projects. We set time for our tasks. We all have like a Google Calendar or whatever we use to block out our time on Outlook. Leadership tends to be the thing we do when we've got free time.
Right.
Leadership tends to be the thing we've done when it's the end of the day and everything's taken care of. And most of us, consciously or usually subconsciously, that's the plan. Okay, as soon as I get everything else done, then I'm going to go spend time with my people. And that's never happens.
Right.
So it never gets done. So if you're complaining about your culture, if you're seeing problems with your culture, if you're not sure you're making a difference as a leader, if you're not sure that you're making a difference for your employees, but you're not setting any time aside for it, do I need to go on? I mean, it's not that difficult to find the problem here.
I also think people, to be able to do those types team buildings or workshops or assessments or things like that, they're like, oh, we can't afford that. We can't afford that. Well, you can't not afford that because it's important for people to learn how to work together. Who's got the skills to do what? All the different things that can come out of those workshops. I just was talking to someone today and they said, oh, I don't know if the boss is going to go for this, the price. I'm like, if you don't, it's hard to just take an assessment without anybody unpacking that for you. So, but I think it's important to make the time, but also put the financial resources aside in order to make sure that you're focusing on these things. Yeah.
Well, it shows what you value. I always love, at CEL, we do a lot of programming for business owners to help them be better business owners. And I'll talk to someone who's thinking about, and they're, oh, I don't have the time. And well, who do you think does? What mythical business owners are sitting around going, oh, I have all this extra time to work on this stuff? They make the time. If they want to be better leaders, business owners, they invest. I shouldn't say they make it. They invest the time.
And I know there's probably people going, stop telling me this. I really am that busy.
Yeah.
I really am working 12 hours a day. Sir or madam, I know, I hear you, I understand. I've been there. I think we've all been there. But the fact of the matter is, it's not going to get better until you spend some time on it.
And going back to the delegating too, a lot of times they're not delegating enough off to their teams. They're not trusting their teams enough to take some things off their plate so that they don't have to be that busy. But in order to see who could be doing what, creating a matrix to see this person has the skill, this person's trainable, this person has the time. How can we shift things around so that all the burden isn't going on these three people, including themselves?
Well, and I want to talk about that because one of the frustrations I have with business owners who are really good at whatever it is that their business does, they become unintentionally, I think, the bottleneck in their own company, right? So all the decisions, all the creative input, all the new products have to go through them. And I always have this conversation with business owners saying, if no part of this business can run without you, or you can't take a 2-week vacation, how's it going to exist post you? If you get hit by a bus, if you want to sell it someday, it's not worth anything if it's just you.
That's your classic micromanager.
How do you get business owners to see that they're the bottleneck? They're the problem. And not only is it making the organization culture maybe difficult, but it's actually hurting the value of the company. I mean, talk about ROI. It's hitting the bottom line.
I always ask my clients that are business owners, what's your hit by the bus plan? Yeah. They've asked me, can you make it win the lottery plan?
I know. It's more
when I was running the nonprofit and we were a small team, we had an emergency succession plan so that if something did happen to me or I won the lottery, they were able to, it was all written down for 6 months to give the board an opportunity to find a replacement. So to have a plan in place makes a lot of sense. Not doing everything yourself. And I've seen organizations where it's the boss has to have everything has to run through them, and it just like you said, bottles it up. It doesn't inspire trust. It doesn't inspire confidence in people. People have a tendency to leave because they feel like they're not valued. You don't trust me. Why do you have to rubber stamp everything? So I think it can cause a lot more problems than just time.
I used to be that way. And I used to think I was scared to have the people that were working for me talking to the clients directly for a number of reasons, including maybe making mistakes or not being as polished as I was when I interacted with the client or something, or even just having the interaction be going over my head or something. And I was such a huge bottleneck. It was terrible all the time. And letting go of that control has made everything easier. So I just want that story to get to people who may be thinking like, well, I can't let go. Like, you kind of have to.
Any research on that to share with us, Jeff?
Oh, yeah, that's not my primary area, but I know that there's quite a bit. I'm sorry, I got distracted thinking about winning the lottery versus getting hit by a bus and going through the psychology behind that in my head. it's hard to let go.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if we've started a small business, we're so proud of it. We put so much of ourselves into it. It's absolutely like your child. So it's completely psychologically reasonable that I want to have my fingers in every part of this. Hopefully I love this. That's what I was thinking. Hopefully I hope all of you listening, like, you've got so much passion for your business, you'd still want to do it if you won the lottery. That's what I was thinking about there.
I used to say that if I won the lottery, I'd still come to work every day. But I also think that I see that a lot in family businesses that are in a succession from generation to generation, where they say they want to succeed out, they say they want to retire and hand the reins over to the next generation, and they don't go away. They're still there, and they show up every day. So, and it's, their presence puts a authority issue in place where people don't know who to go to. So I think I see that a lot in family businesses.
To me, this goes back to culture and communication, though, because if you are the bottleneck, your employees know it. And if your employees know it, they have a choice about whether or not to tell you that. And if they're not telling you that, that says something. That says something about your culture, your own communications, your own leadership. One of the things that Althea has heard me say time and time and time again is that one of the most effective questions a manager can ask is, what am I doing wrong? What could I be doing better? And most of us are afraid to ask that question because we're giving up a little power. We're setting up people to attack us. And then as soon as they start talking, then we're thinking in our heads, okay, how do I tell them they're wrong? How do I defend against this? Which defeats the purpose of the question. But if you've got the right culture, open, transparent, we're not here for egos. We're here to get the job done, to accomplish our mission, to grow this business into something amazing for our community and for each other, then we should be okay to say, hey, I think there's a problem with this process. I think we can improve.
And you talked about in the beginning how a lot of times business owners and leaders are afraid to ask that question because they're afraid to not have people think that they're the be-all. Perfect. Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah.
And I think that, humility and authenticity, and it's important these days. And I think it's, if you can just be real and show the folks that work with you that, you're vulnerable too, that you're not perfect. And how can I grow as well? I don't think it's going to put as a black eye on things as people think it does.
To acknowledge that's not human nature. It is human nature to accumulate power once we have it, to protect it, I've got to make sure I'm demonstrating my expertise all the time. I don't want to undermine my credibility, again, especially if I'm a woman or a minority and it's been harder for me to get here, or, this is my first business or anything like that. It's subconsciously, like there's something just in our human nature that very, very much is uncomfortable with leaving ourselves open to criticism in this way. This is not what we think a leader should do. When we think of great leaders in movies or books, you very rarely read about them going, oh, let's ask everybody what I did wrong. Right. But research is increasingly showing, Althea is exactly right. Humility 50 years ago, humility in a leader was seen as a sign of weakness. Now it's seen as a sign of strength. The world's coming
important.
Yeah.
Well, we are running out of time, but this is a great episode. I want to give you guys a chance to kind of respond to a closing question. So I'm a business owner listening to this today, and I know I have some work to do. So I want to become a better leader. What's one practical step they could start doing tomorrow? What's one thing they could do? And I'll give you each a chance to say,
Go to
Jim,
your calendar.
Yes.
Right now, block out 30 minutes a week where you're going to do nothing but think about this, talk to people, be a better leader. Block it out now. Treat it the same way you treat a meeting or a customer engagement or a project you can't get out of. Like, you cannot move this. You can't cancel it. You can't reschedule it. This 30 minutes is for you to just go talk to your people and ask questions like, what can I do to help you accomplish your goals? Make it just as important as anything else. Surely you can find 30 minutes once a week for that.
Your advice, which I think is very, very good, is literally do the absolute minimum to think about it a little bit on half an hour
It's a
week.
starting point.
No, I know, and I agree with you.
It's a starting
if
point.
you're not thinking about it at all, you're not getting anywhere at all. So I think it's a great advice that everyone should be able to do because it's really a low bar.
Yeah, very doable.
And I say agree with Jim and Jordan. I think that hiring somebody that's going to help you with that. And if you haven't figured it out now, you probably need some help to do that. So hire yourself a facilitator, an executive coach. Have a personality assessment done so you can understand, on yourself or your team, to be able to get some professional assistance to be able to do what Jim just said, because I think it's important. If they knew how to do it, they would have figured it out by now.
Right. So recognize that sometimes you need some assistance.
All
right. Yeah. Well, Jim and Althea, thank you for sharing your insights on a topic that obviously is so central to success of every organization. Great businesses are rarely built by great ideas alone. They're built by leaders who create an environment where people can do their best work, they can grow, and they can contribute to something meaningful. If you've enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, leave a review, and share it with another business owner who's working to build a stronger team and a stronger organization. I'm Susan Steffen, and this has been Incorporate. Until next time, keep learning, keep building, and keep leading.